All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started with today's agent development training. Thanks for working with us last week. I know we pivoted to the 11 o'clock hour. I think it was helpful and insightful. We had a lot that we covered. I will be sending out some additional information specific to Vanilla Soft and some of the videos that I had shared with our Indiana agents. I'll share with the Michigan agents as well. So we're continuing to plow forward on that. A lot of cool things happening. As I mentioned before I hit record, I came off of a 30-minute call with John Cosgriff, who is the gentleman within United Health Group that Dan Garrison, our president and CEO, directly reports to. So he is over all of UH1, which obviously Health Markets rolls up under UH1, which then rolls up under the larger United Health Group umbrella. And so it was great to hear from John. A lot of great things happening within the organization. It's just fun to hear about a lot of the other resources and assets within the larger United Health Group organization that we're beginning to tap into, both from a technology perspective, from a lead generation perspective, just cross-pollinating on a number of things. So John shared some of those thoughts. I do think, some of the big things that he talked about are, the opportunities that exist in front of us here this coming AEP OEP season. And sometimes opportunities are disguised in what could be perceived as obstacles. But I do think there's going to be some big opportunities. Just to kind of be clear, and I'm going to keep talking about some of these things because I think we've got to get prepped for them. I think there's going to be continued volatility in the Medicare space as we move into AEP. I don't know if you guys saw the recent news, but in the Medicare space, there was a large lawsuit that was filed last week by the Department of Justice against three of the carrier partners that we work with. It was specifically Aetna, Anthem, and Humana. And included in the lawsuit was two distributors that kind of operate in the way we do, where we're distributing product to consumers. It was GoHealth and Select Quote were the two named defendants in this lawsuit. And so it's a pretty large thing that the Department of Justice is pursuing here. It could, at some level, change things and how things operate within, the Medicare space. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Fortunately, United Healthcare was not a portion of that lawsuit. Health Markets had nothing to do with it. So it's always better to be on the outside of these things. But that is going to create some volatility. And I think there's also going to be volatility around ratings. The Trump administration did give a pretty good increase to Medicare carriers for 2026. I think it was a 5.6% increase and what the money's being distributed from the federal government to the carriers are going to be. So it's going to give the carriers some opportunities. I also think, though, the carriers are going to be challenged by the $2,000 cap that was implemented for 2025 on the out-of-pocket cost for prescription drugs. That's going to be a challenge simply because that's a lot more risk that's been pressed onto the carrier's plate with that cap. And, coming into 2025, there was no real data to work off of. I think moving into 2026, there's going to be more data for the carriers to work off of to understand what that cost actually was to them. And it could have a significant impact on, specifically standalone prescription drug plan premiums. And then obviously Medicare Advantage plans that include prescription drug coverage. So I think that Medicare space is going to continue to be volatile. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes there as we move forward. I also think in the under 65 space, there's also a lot of volatility there. It's not 100% guaranteed yet, but it's looking like CMS's original proposal is going to skinny down the open enrollment period for under 65 from 10 weeks to 6 weeks. So it's actually going to get rid of the December 15th to January 15th window. Will just go away under the current regs. It's also looking like many of the existing clients that we have on ACA plans will need to be actively re-enrolled. I'm still not 100% sure how that's all going to pan out. In the past, we've been able to allow clients to passively re-enroll, or if they did nothing, their plan just rolled over and their subsidy got recalculated. So it didn't require that we do an active re-enrollment. It looks like for 2026, on many of the policies, the government's going to require an active re-enrollment. So a shorter window and the need to touch every single client is going to create some additional volatility. The other big thing that's on the table right now is that the enhanced federal subsidies that were passed into law a couple of years ago by the Biden administration are at risk for 2026. If you guys remember a couple of years ago, if we were working with a client, there was a cliff and a cap on those subsidies. It typically was at 400% of the federal poverty level. If someone made over income that put them over 400% of the federal poverty level, there was no government subsidies available. The Biden administration enhanced subsidies and threw billions of dollars towards covering more people and giving more people, subsidy assistance. And so there is right now that is set to expire at the end of the year and not be intact for 2026 unless legislative action is taken. And so that's going to be something that's going to be evolving and potentially changing. It is interesting as the carriers are looking at this right now. They're having to file all their plans and the rates for 2026 with CMS. And what John shared with us this morning is that most of the carriers are coming in with two sets of numbers. They're coming in with a set of numbers, assuming that the subsidies stay intact and that it's a relatively large risk pool where they can spread risk further. And they're coming in with a secondary set of numbers that they're filing for approval on. Because if the subsidies go away, obviously the end result of that is that the ACA market and the people enrolled in ACA plans will most likely shrink, creating maybe a little bit more volatile type of risk pool that might cost the carriers more money. And so I didn't realize that dynamic that the carriers were coming to the table with two sets of numbers because there's no guarantee which direction this is going to go at this point in the year. So there is a lot of volatility that's out there right now. I will tell you, I'm involved heavily with Health Markets, the executive leadership team and the TVP team on trying to figure out workarounds, technology that we can introduce, additional ways that we can expand our bandwidth, and really leverage technology, to help with these re-enrollment processes. I actually had a great conversation with an industry leader last Thursday, and we talked about the idea of building out a re-enrollment platform for the ACA, where a consumer might, this is just an example of what it might look like, so I'm totally brainstorming here, but where a consumer might receive a survey that we send them online. We send them the survey, they click on a link, they go in, they update their demographic information and their adjusted gross income information. And then the platform comes back with, okay, this is the plan that you're enrolled in. Based on what you've told us, this plan will cost X next year after recalibrating your subsidies. The client then has the opportunity to say, yep, I want it, and click a button and they're automatically actively re-enrolled. Or they can say, no, I don't want this plan, I want to reshop. And then they have the opportunity to leverage the Health Sherpa platform to go in and go through a self-service shopping experience to select a different plan. Or they have a third option where they say, no, I need to talk to my agent. So we're really vetting through what it looks like, to be able to have a simpler, more streamlined process to execute these re-enrollments. One of the topics that we're going to be covering next week, which I would encourage all of you to get on the call next week, Steve and I are going to be doing a much deeper dive into some ideas around ICHRA, individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements, and the opportunity that exists right now in that particular space. I specifically asked John Cosgriff about it this morning, and he was very bullish on the fact that ICHRAs are the wave of the future. That's where small companies are going to gravitate to. And I think we've got some vendors and some resources in place to be able to really leverage that at a very, very high level. And so, we're partnering with some ICHRA vendors as well. I'll put in a couple of different plugs here. First of all, be on ADT next week. Number two, I would encourage you guys, any of you that are not yet familiar with ICHRAs, we have another vendor that I'm bringing in on Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock via Zoom. It's a company called Savvy, and they are another vendor that we have at our disposal to assist us with ICHRA implementations. Anytime that we implement an individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement, there needs to be a vendor behind the scenes administering everything related to that particular plan. And so we obviously have Base, which is a UHG owned asset that we've worked with for many, many years. Base is great. They work on a reimbursement model. And then we have other vendors, including Savvy, who will be coming in on Thursday, who's a little bit more robust model where they make it feel more like real group insurance, utilizing escrow accounts and other technology and platforms. So we've got some cool things building on this. Steve and some other agents within our team have been testing some things and working on some things, and we're hoping to be fully prepared to share a lot of that intel and a lot of those ideas with you next week on the agent development training. So Thursday at 1 is the Savvy. We're going to do a ICHRA 101 training with Savvy. We're going to follow that up with a 201 and probably a 301 training in the coming weeks as well, just to get you all acclimated about what ICHRAs are all about. And then next Tuesday, Cav and I are going to do a much deeper dive, maybe with some agent help, because we do have a few of you who've been testing some things in the market that seem to be getting some traction. So I know that's a lot. I feel like I just spilled my guts to all of you, but there's a lot going on there. I'm excited about what's in front of us. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I'm really, really impressed again about how health markets is laying track in front of us on a lot of these important issues and making sure that we have the best in class technology and the resources, the tools, the carriers, the infrastructure to be able to execute. So Cav and I have been talking the last couple of weeks about where we wanted to pivot to after we finished our 12-week or 12 modules that we just concluded last week. And I think we really both believed and felt wholeheartedly that today's discussion is really, really important, especially for those of you that are not yet executing at the level you want to be executing at. Steve and I are involved in a Sandler sales training mastery course. Many of you know that Steve and I have both been through Sandler sales training. I've been through it multiple times over the last 25 years. The Sandler is one of the things that drew me to health markets because I had been through 2 years of their President's Club with the company I was with previous to health markets. And when I came to health markets, they were just beginning, to work with Sandler, and back then it was called the Step Up system. And that was one of the things that kind of drew me in, is that they were embracing Sandler. Over the years, Steve and I have both been students of Sandler. We've been through the foundations and essentials courses, and we're now in a group with about, I don't know, what are there, maybe 10 or 12 agents that are a part of our territory who have all committed to this. I'm paying for the cost of it, but we're meeting once a month and we're leveraging a lot of the Sandler tools. And it is truly a Sandler mastery training class that we're engaging in. And I think it's really good because it's taking me back to some of the basics, and I think Steve too. And Eric Meyer is our Sandler trainer, and he's just bringing a lot of great things to those meetings. I will say, 2 weeks or 2 months ago, I think he circled back and kind of introduced the idea and some of the most core fundamental mastery techniques of Sandler. And I know Cav's going to touch on these today, but I just wanted to lead off with these 4 mastery techniques that Eric really thinks are probably super important. The first one, which he defines as the most critical mastery technique, is, do I have a cookbook? And Steve's going to talk about what that means today. The second technique is, am I executing my cookbook to design? Am I doing what is in the cookbook to try to get where I want to go? And then the third piece of this is, am I reaching out to the right people at the right time? I'm sorry, am I reaching out to the right people and the right organizations? And then the last piece is, am I saying the right things at the right time? And this is a sequence where you've got to build, it's building blocks, right? The foundational piece of this is, do I have a cookbook? And then am I executing the cookbook to design? And then am I reaching out to the right people in the right organizations? And then am I saying the right things at the right time, right? Working on my verbiage. I think so many agents come into this business and they're so focused on what should be last in this sequence is, am I saying the right thing at the right time? Do I have the right words? Is it in the right sequence? That's what people are really focused on. And I hope that today's discussion really takes us back to the basics of, number one, do I have a cookbook? And then number two, am I executing my cookbook to design? Because whether or not you're reaching out to the right people or organizations, or whether or not you're saying the right things, means nothing if you don't have a cookbook and you're not executing it to design. So hopefully that's a good lead in for you, Cav. I know you have some thoughts to share. I'm going to go ahead and give you control here. Bear with me just a moment. Anything to add to that before we jump in?
Nope, it's all going to be in there.
Perfect.
All right, can you see this place that we should all be at right this moment? I don't know where that is, but it sure looks better than Indiana. All right. So, again, like Silas says, what we're going to talk about is, developing a behavioral cookbook. And this is Sandler's key to success. And for a long time, I kind of read about it, heard about it, but again, working with Eric over the last several months, this whole idea of a cookbook has really kind of resonated with me, and it's something that I think it's missing with a lot of agents on our team. Okay, so before we get into that, though, again, for those of you who've gone through training with me, which I think every single one of you have, we talk about what's called the Sandler success triangle, which is attitude, behavior, and techniques. And so the key to success for most people, or the thing that's going to cause most people to fail, is the lack of behavior. It's not acting the way that we need to act to be successful. I mean, I think a lot of us, we can work on our attitude and all that kind of stuff. Health Markets provides us with all the tools to be successful. So why do some people make it at Health Markets when we all have the same opportunity, and why do some fail? And I think as I look back over 28 years in the business and several of those years training and leading, the people that don't make it in this business, it's usually because it's not because they can't do this business, it's they won't do what's necessary to be successful. It's just that simple. Now there's a few people who come in and they realize I just don't like insurance. Okay, that's fine. But for the people who like it and want to make this work, but for some reason they can't, I would say 99% of those are people that just don't act the way that's necessary to run a business. And so let's just kind of review what the behavior triangle is again. And then I'm going to kind of pull all this together on what it means to have a cookbook. So obviously, all behavior starts with goals. If you don't have something you're striving for, what are you doing? I mean, where are you going? I mean, you're just kind of out there blowing around in the wind and you really have no rhyme or reason. And goals can be broken down into three categories. The first is long-term goals. I like to look at that as what am I looking to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 years? Some people maybe, what do I want to accomplish in the next 10 years? I mean, they have long-term goals that this is what I'm shooting for. Then the next one is short-term goals. You know, what am I looking to accomplish in the next several months, the next year? But I believe, along with Sandler, that the most important goal is what am I willing to do on a daily basis to hit my short-term goals and hit my long-term goals. Because again, for those of you who have read The Slight Edge or Atomic Habits, you realize it's the little things we do every single day that you don't even see anything going on. You think they're mundane, but those are the things that are going to take us from here and get us way over here. It's just that, again, it's just you don't see it happening. But that's where I think this all needs to start. It's what am I willing to do on a daily basis to take my business where I need to go on a short-term and a long-term goal. So that's goals. And again, Silas does a very good talk about SMART goals, all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is the key out of all this is we have got to start focusing on what are we willing to do every single day to get to where we want to go. Again, if I want to lose weight, what do I have to do? I have to work out. I have to eat right every day. I can't do it once a week and think I'm going to get there. Okay. It's got to be every single day. And again, when I go and work out in the gym, I'm not going to magically drop 20 pounds. But if I go and hit the gym and I eat right 6 months later, all of a sudden I've dropped 10 pounds and I feel a lot better. So again, keep this in the back of your mind. The most important goal you can ever set is what am I going to do today? Because today's all we got. Okay. Now, the next step is to have a plan. The plan, the first thing we need to do is we need to build the plan. Have I written a game plan to build my business? I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed that most people who don't make it in this business, they don't have a written game plan. So if you don't have a written game plan, it's not a plan, it's a wish. I'm hoping this happens. But when you could actually take pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, however you want to do it, I think when you put something down in writing, it's a tangible first step to get you to where you want to go. The second thing that I think is extremely important, and Sandler would agree, is am I tracking my activity? See, guys, we're not in an hourly business. We're in an activity business. And Sandler believes, just like Silas and I believe, you have got to track what you're doing. because you've got to be able to track what you're doing so you can fine tune, you can make course corrections. If you're not tracking what you're doing, leaders can't help you get to where you need to go, because if you don't know what you're doing, how in the world do we know what you're doing? But when you can actually track what you're doing, that allows you to make the course corrections that are necessary to go where I need to go. And you're going to find out, especially early in this business, you're going to make a lot of course corrections, because a lot of this is going to be trial and error. You're going to find some things that you excel at. You're also going to find some things that you absolutely hate doing. But if you track it, you can actually see what you need to do. And so you can fine tune. And then finally, the last portion of this is actions. Number one, do I have the discipline, the inner drive to do what's necessary to be successful? Do I have the vitality, the strength, the energy? Is accomplishing things in this business, does it fire me up or tear me down? Because again, if you don't like doing this, you're going to have a hard time going out in there doing it. And then the biggest one is guts. When I fail, am I going to quit, or am I going to get back up and keep going? And so this is the whole thing, part of the behavior triangle, that if you want to change your course of directions, you got to start with goals. You got to have some long-term goals, short-term, but the most important is daily. You've got to build a written game plan. You got to track your activity so you can fine tune. But mostly, guys, you've got to execute, because there's a lot of people on this call. They have goals. They have a plan. They're just not executing it. They're not doing it the way they said they were going to do it. Okay. So that is the behavior triangle. Silas, is there anything you want to add on this before we continue?
No, I think you said it very well. I don't have anything to add. I will say, there was something in the chat here that I saw. Maggie said she did walk and drops all day yesterday and had to stop at the library to print off more fact finders because small business were loving the ICRA idea. I got more traction yesterday in marketing like that than I have in maybe the last 3 months. I'm excited to see what ICRA can do. So not necessarily on the topic you're talking about, but going back to what I talked about earlier and what we're probably going to be talking about next week. So
Well, geez, Maggie and I had a little conversation on Friday. Something seems to be working.
it does. We're seeing some pockets of traction. So thank you for sharing, Maggie. That's awesome to hear. I may call you and pick your brain a little bit more on that here in the next couple of days. So
All right. So why do Sandler call it a cookbook? And they like to make this analogy: are you a grill master or a baker? Okay. And so when you think of a grill master, there are people that, they can grill steaks. They can, you put food on a grill, it's gonna taste phenomenal. But the thing that's common about grill masters is a lot of times they don't follow a recipe. They have a feel for what they want, but there's no precise way to get there. It's more on feeling, and or they can be anal like me and use a meat thermometer, but some people don't have to do that kind of stuff. And generally they just like to wing it. Okay. And so that's how certain people run their business. They're grill masters. They really don't follow a recipe. They just they kind of wing it. They fly by the seat of their pants, and they have some success, but it's not something that they can really hone in and guarantee the success to be replicatable. Now, on the other side of that, Sandler talks, or I should say, instead of Sandler, Eric Meyer talks about a baker. What a baker does is they follow a precise recipe. They move in specific steps, and the outcomes are calculated and consistent. Why? Because they don't veer off script. They do exactly what the recipe tells them to do. And so if they're baking a pie, if they follow the recipe precisely the way it was intended, when the pie comes out, it tastes very good. Now, if there's other people out there that don't follow the recipe, or they make a mistake, does the pie sometimes turn out to taste not so good? For you bakers on the call here, I think I always run it by Sandra, where she likes to bake, and if you put in salt instead of sugar, you're going to have a different taste. Okay. Where with a grill master, I can throw on salt, pepper, whatever. and I'm just kind of just going through it. And so that's the whole idea behind this, because when you think of these two concepts, because neither one of them are bad, it's just different outcomes. Okay. So, but there's a difference between a grill master and a baker when it comes to our business. And so let's look at grill masters for a second. So what this chart is the vertical line is marketing effort, with 1 being very little effort to 10 being maximum effort. The bottom line is appointment count, but then there's also something called abundant thinking. So a 1 would be, I will meet with whoever will let me in the door. And a 10 is, I'm going to be very picky on who I meet with. And what happens for someone who's a grill master, they're just getting started in the business, the marketing effort is high. They'll pretty much meet with whoever will let them in. And as they do the marketing and they meet with people, their appointment count's going to start going up. As the appointment count starts going up, the marketing effort may go down a little bit because I'm running more appointments, so I don't have as much time. I'm also going to get a little bit more selective on who I meet with. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And eventually what's going to be happening is my marketing effort is going to go down to very little. I'm going to be meeting with the people I want to meet. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to hit a plateau where I have nothing. We call it the sophomore slump. New reps get into this business. They start doing everything we tell them to do. They market at a high level. And then all of a sudden, the appointments come in. And it took 60 to 90 days for you to kind of get this ball rolling. And then it's like gone in a week. And so what ends up happening as the appointments count go down, what do? We start jacking up our marketing efforts again. We get a little bit less selective on who we meet with. And then we kind of get down to the bottom, and then it's the same thing. And so what happens with a grill master, it's this ebb and flow, these feasts and famines that most salespeople deal with because they don't have a plan. They're just, they market hard when they don't have appointments. They quit marketing when they do. They will see anybody when they're at the bottom. They get selective at the top, and it just creates a lot of inconsistency, because I think the bottom line is, this is how grill masters work. How we feel determines how we act. I know I need to walk into 20 businesses today, but it's kind of hot, so I'm not gonna do it because I don't feel like it. I've already run 3 appointments this week. I can justify not marketing. And so that's where most salespeople live their life. They're grill masters. They're going to have some success. They're going to do some things. They're going to write some business if they stick around. It's just that their life is going to be totally inconsistent. Where when you look at a baker, on the other hand, bakers start marketing at a very high level. And at first, they're going to be not so selective, but as they continue to get appointments, they're going to become more selective on who they meet with. But what they don't quit doing is they don't quit marketing. Now, it may go down a little bit, but bakers understand, I have got to continue to market all the time. And then I need to track what I'm doing. Because what ends up happening is this gradual growth upward becomes, this happens because there's data to make course corrections. So again, I continue to market. I kind of can pick and choose who I want to see with, but I'm going to keep the marketing effort there. So when I have these plateaus, I don't go back down. I just kind of level off and go in. And so what bakers do is they have a cookbook. They follow the recipe. But this is how they think. How I act determines how I feel. In other words, these are the kinds of people that say, if I tell myself I'm going to walk into 30 businesses today, they walk into 30 businesses that day regardless of how they feel. Because think about this, guys. If you have ever told yourself you were going to do something and then you didn't do it, and I can't see everybody, but Silas, you probably can. How many of you, by show of hands, You knew you were supposed to do something, you didn't do it, and you felt guilty when you were done. Anybody? Yeah. But how many of you made yourself do something, you didn't want to do it? Like the battle I have virtually every day is, do I really need to go to the gym today? I don't want to. But on the days that I make myself go to the gym, when I get done, I feel better. And that's what this whole principle is about, is how I feel determines how we act. That's going to create a very inconsistent life. But if I learn to live how I act determines how I feel, you're going to have a lot more consistency. And instead of having feasts and famines in your life, you're going to have consistency where you're writing business every week. Some weeks are going to be higher than others. But again, it's just the business is just flowing in a way that has consistency, because that's what most people are missing. The people that I think hit the tier 3, hit the tier 4, yeah, we have some big weeks, but the biggest thing, and Silas can attest to this, we just write business every single week. Some weeks it's 1,000 FYCR, some week it's 10,000. But again, we have learned to run our business in a way that we're going to continue to do the things that need to be done. And what are the things that need to be done? Market your business, dial the phone, and run appointments. Those are the 3 pillars, but we just need to create a game plan that keeps us on track to do that kind of stuff. So Silas, are there any questions or anything you want to add before I talk about what makes up the cookbook?
No, I was checking the chat box. I don't see any questions there, and I think what you're saying is spot on. So keep rolling.
Okay, so what makes up the cookbook? Very first thing that makes up the cookbook is what's called the map of life. Again, I think a key to this is creating a schedule that will allow success. Again, if I'm going to have a business where I'm not winging it, I think the very first thing you need to do is you need to tell yourself what you're going to be doing and when. So the way that I have done this routinely for years is I'm a very big believer of presetting appointment slots. And then once I preset those appointment slots, if I don't have an appointment, my only other option is to market my business or dial the phone. So this is just an example I kind of put together. So for those of us on the Jessup team, again, I think the very first thing you should do is Monday morning, Sandra does a roundtable. You need to put that in there and just commit to being on that, because you're going to learn things from that. And then maybe from 9 to noon, you're going to be on the phones. And then at 1 o'clock, I'm either going to go run an appointment or I'm going to market my business. Then maybe 3:30, appointment market. And then maybe I'm going to take live transfers Monday nights from 7 to 9. So it's doing something like that. Then on Tuesday, I'm going to commit to being on ADT every week. And then I've got appointment/market. And again, marketing can be going out and marketing. It could be doing direct mails at home. It could be dialing the phone. Okay. It's just, if I'm not running an appointment, I'm either dialing the phone or I'm getting my information out to people. Then for me, a lot of you know, I do evenings on Wednesday night. So I take Wednesday morning off. Then I've got another phone session specific for calling on Thursday morning, another live transfer session Thursday night, then a couple more appointments on Friday, and then I end my week with a phone. Silas used to know this. Every Friday afternoon, I used to work the phones, and I would set a lot of appointments Friday afternoon, because Monday mornings, people are in a horrible mood. Friday afternoon, they're in a good mood. And so what I do is I would get on the phones, I would schedule some appointments Friday afternoon, going into the weekend knowing I got 2 or 3 or 4 appointments set the next week. Where when I go into and I look at next week and there's no appointment set, it kind of makes for a bummer weekend. But the key to this whole thing is, this is my schedule every single week. I don't know where I'm going to be running appointments. I just know I'm going to be running appointments. And if I don't have an appointment, I know I'm going to be marketing or dialing, and I never have to figure out when to do that stuff, because I have a schedule that tells me when I'm going to do it. So, Silas, what do you need to add before I move on?
First of all, this warms my heart because this is really good stuff. And this is exactly how you taught me to do it, exactly how I did it. I know that how goes Monday morning on the phone, so goes the rest of my week. I love the idea of time blocking phone time because it is difficult to do anything other than dial the phones when you're dialing the phones, right? You can't commingle that with other activities. But I think scheduling your appointment times and then knowing, hey, if an appointment isn't in that time block, I'm immediately going to pivot into marketing my business, right? And you're really encompassing the three pillars that we have to build the business on, the three activities that drive revenue, scheduling appointments, running appointments, and marketing our business. So I think that's great. I know you take Wednesday mornings. I think that's time that you take with your spouse. And so I think that's important to build your personal life into the schedule as well. I love that you're willing to work into the evening, at least one evening a week. And I totally agree with you that, Friday afternoon is a wonderful time, along with Saturday morning, if you're willing to do it, to catch people that you won't catch at any other time. I will tell you, coming into Monday morning, if you can have even a couple of appointments already on the books for the week, it takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? I think my goal when before I hired my first assistant, when I was still pulling all the levers in my practice myself, my goal was to come into Friday or Monday morning with 5 appointments already on the books. My goal was to have 8 to 10 appointments. But if I had 5 coming in on Monday morning, it was going to be a great week because I was not going to have to pound the phones till 8 o'clock on Monday night or get back on the phones Tuesday morning, those types of things. So I think those are all good things to think about. A couple of other things that I'll just mention. Um, if you feel like you're losing time, and I've helped a couple of you with this over the last couple of months, if you feel like time is escaping you and you're not adhering to the schedule, that's a problem and you got to figure it out. You have to adhere to the schedule that you set. It can't just be a schedule that's fluffy. You've got to stick to it. And I would tell you one of the greatest things that I've done over the course of my career in analyzing my business is to do a time study. You don't have to do it for an extended period of time. I know one of you in particular is doing it right now where every 30 minutes you're keeping track of what did you do? Because that will open your eyes to where time is, you're losing time and things, are not getting accomplished. So that's important to understand. I also think as you start tracking your numbers, a couple of key numbers that I know were important to me in my practice. Number one, how many times do I dial the phone in an hour if I'm dialing the phone for 60 minutes? Like, what is my cadence? What is my average? Is it 12? Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 30? How many dials are you making in an hour? And then secondary to that, how many dials does it take you to schedule an appointment where a consumer is engaging and willing to work with you? So I know for me, many years when I was doing my own dials, I was averaging 12 to 15 dials an hour, and I would schedule an appointment for every 12 to 15 times that I dialed the phone. Knowing those numbers really helped me to hone in on what I had to do each week because I know if I needed, if I wanted 10 appointments in a week, I probably had 10 hours of dialing that actually needed to be done. That was based on my own numbers. And then the last thing I think you've got to know is like when you're marketing yourself, how many people are you touching each hour that you're marketing? So there's obviously different forms of marketing, but if you're walking and talking small business America, how many walk and talks an hour do you average? And when you think about an average, that's keeping track of it over multiple hours so that you can run the numbers and figure out what your average is. Those types of numbers and knowing what pace and cadence you work at allows you to back into the math that you need to have to be able to build an effective plan and really, I think, complete this cookbook. So I had a few thoughts, Cal, but thanks for asking.
Yeah, no problem. Um, so yeah, this when I was a sales leader, the very first thing I taught people to do is create a schedule. I mean, you got to tell yourself when you're working, not only for you, but your family needs to know when you're working too. If you want to create some balance in this life, I'm not saying, you don't have to do it in 40 hours. You may have to work 50 or 60, but your family needs to know that Tuesdays and Thursday nights, dad's not home, mom's not home. Saturday morning, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do it for the rest of my life. I'm just going to do it till I can get to a certain point. But sticking to a schedule is huge because it'll teach you habits and you'll get into a rhythm and a routine where you really don't even need to think about it and everything becomes second nature. So again, if I was planning on running an appointment on Monday at 1 and I don't have an appointment, I don't have to think about what am I going to do. I already know I'm going to do some sort of marketing or I'm going to dial the phone. it becomes a habit that once you generate that, you're going to find this business becomes very simple because you're starting to become like a baker. You're not a grill master, you're becoming a baker. Okay. Second things, goals and game plans. What do I want or need to accomplish? Again, Silas has this great goals and game plans that he provides. I think you need to take this seriously. You need to figure out what you want, what you're willing to do. Are you willing to invest money? Are you investing time? If you're going to invest time, how many things are you willing to do? And then start with this, with the idea that I've got to figure out what gets me out of bed in the morning. Now, initially, when you're a new rep, here's what gets you out of bed. I need to pay my bills. Okay. So again, sometimes that kind of motivation isn't bad. You know, that's one of the things I used to teach people is I used to teach the mindset of, look at this business as this is the last opportunity you're ever going to get. And if you don't make this work, your family's going to lose everything. That'll motivate you a little bit different than I'll give this a try. If this doesn't work, I can always go back to the job I hated, right? And so having a goals and game plans, I think initially for new people, it's what you need to accomplish. You need to pay your bills. Because if you can figure this out enough to where you can pay your bills and get your spouse off your back, you can stick around long enough to figure this out and take it to a whole nother level. But we got to survive first. So what do I need to do to survive? How much money do I need to survive to pay my bills and eat macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles? A lot of you will realize that's not a big as number as you think, and it doesn't take as many products to do that. And then once you're surviving, now it's okay, I want to take this to a whole nother level. Now I need to change my goals and game plan. But right now I need to sell this many products to survive. And I'm a big believer in just picking one or two products. You know, the safeguard and the critical guard. I mean, heart attack, cancer, stroke plans, maybe throw the accident in there. Figure out how many of those things you need to sell to pay your bills.
And Cap, I would just say here too, we've been doing some analysis on this. I've been talking to a lot of top sales leaders. If you're a new agent on the team, I think a really simple metric that you can look at is how much monthly GRIC golden rule premium do I need to get each week? Like, do I need to sell? Right. And a lot of our top sales teams across the country who are have really having some success getting new agents up and running. That is the sole metric that they're focusing on is getting $100 a month of GRIC premium per week, like each week, selling $100 a month of GRIC premium. That could
Yeah,
be
that could be a $50 plan on one person, a $60 plan on another, or it could be $100 to one person.
yeah. I sold last week a 26 or 2 weeks ago, maybe a 26-year-old. Her health insurance was $4 a month, and then she bought $68 of supplemental insurance through GRIC. It was a cancer policy, or I'm sorry, a critical illness policy, an accident policy, a term safeguard, and $40 of it was a vision dental plan. So, you know, that one sale to a 26-year-old got me 68% of the way. It was $68 a month, 68% of the way to $100 in monthly premium per week. So even if you just set that metric, I want $100 a week of GRIC premium, everything else would fall into place for you.
And guys, if you want help with that, I've created a calculator where I can pop numbers in and we can backtrack to show you what you would need to sell to get what you need. If you want to set up a 10-minute call, you just tell me what you need. And I can say, hey, this is how many you need to sell. Okay. All right. So that's goals and game plans. Now, the last thing is there's two sections of the PTS I want to talk about. The first is the lead creation activity goals. What am I committing to do? This is the thing where you need to become a baker. This is your recipe. Okay. Again, I'm just showing you mine. And what I'm committed to do is 150 walk-in drops a week, 50 direct mails, and 200 paper box stuffs. Okay, that's me. Okay, but here's the thing I just focus on. I don't focus on these numbers. I focus on these numbers. So again, my goal is I'm going to walk into 30 businesses a day. I'm going to send out 10 direct mails a day. I'm going to do 40 paper box a day. Now, again, there could be situations where I do all 200 paper boxes in one, because I don't have anything else to do and I'm in a subdivision and I'm going to hit the whole thing. But again, the whole idea behind this is I am going to accomplish this. And the easiest way to accomplish it is break it down into daily goals. This is a non-negotiable. The only time I can't do this is if I have like 3 appointments. So if I have 3 appointments, I don't have to worry about if I hit my daily goals. Okay. If I have 2 appointments, okay, I should hit some of it. If I have no appointments, I need to hit it. Okay. I have no excuses. But starting and figuring out what you're going to do. And again, I just do it on the things I can control. So again, walking into businesses, if I'm in subdivisions, stuff like that. But again, obviously with you guys, if you're buying leads, there's dials you can do, walk and drop follow-ups. So the whole idea is to take these activities and decide what you're willing to do and then do it. And then you follow up with keeping track, because again, the reason you want to track your activity is what gets measured gets done. That's an Eric Meyer comment that just resonated with me, that if I'm going to hold myself accountable to things and I measure it, I'm going to get it done. Okay. And so by using your PTS this way, you can actually look at it and determine if you're hitting your numbers or not. Okay. And so when I look at this, it's, right now I'm not hitting my goals. Well, there's been a lot of training stuff going on. We have home construction going on right now. So again, if I don't hit my numbers, which for me is 500 a week, that's my bare bones minimum. If I don't hit 500, I tell myself why. Again, now I'm trying to get as many points as I can, but to me, 500 is what I need to do, whether it be from presentations, phone dialing, stuff like that. And if I don't hit the bare minimum, I need to tell myself why. Well, that's for me, a 28-year veteran. I think 500 is a good number to maintain. I think if you're a new rep and you want to build your business, you need to be shooting for 750 to 1,000. And for you brand new people, most of that's going to be coming from dialing and marketing. It's not going to be coming from the presentations. But just keep in mind, as you start marketing, as you start dialing the phone, you're going to get more appointments. Have the discipline to keep the marketing going. You got to figure it out. You might not do as many, but you need to continue to do it. The only time I don't market my business is October 1st through December 15th. The rest of the time I'm hitting numbers because again, I'm always marketing, always getting my stuff out there to find people. Okay. So anything you want to add on the PTS, Silas, before I wrap up with the last slide?
Couple of thoughts. So we go back one slide.
Oh, yeah.
I like what you did here too. I mean, I think this is where you start is because there's 3 things we do, right? We schedule appointments, we run appointments, and we market our business. The only thing that Cav is accounted for initially is his marketing, right? That is all. I mean, D is your walk-in drops, E is your direct mails, and F is your paper box drops. So he's hitting 400 with just those. You stack dials on top of that, and then any appointments that he runs are worth 25 points a piece. You can easily understand how it is not difficult to be at 1,000 points a week if you're truly working and being efficient with what you do. And I'd go back and just reiterate what you said a moment ago. What gets measured gets done. I think that's where so many people like miss the boat completely on this. What gets measured gets done. So are you tracking it and are you measuring it each week? Ultimately we've built this out in a way and this process out in a way. This is not like something we've just shot from the hip on. This is literally 15 to 20 years worth of development that has gotten us to the point where we have a cookbook that we can hand to you. It includes your goals and game plan, your map of life, and the performance tracker spreadsheet. And you guys can use that how you see fit. But I do think you need to be using it, especially until you get in the right habits and you know what needs to be done. And you got to figure out what are those critical measures of success that you have to track and you have to hold yourself accountable to. At the end of each week, we hope to put you in a position by using this platform and this system so that you can ask yourself, what were my goals for the week? Did I hit those goals? If not, why not? And then what am I going to do to tweak it for next week? That will help you avoid getting out in left field, 60 or 90 or 120 days into your career. The only other thing I'm going to add to this has not historically been a part of our performance tracker spreadsheet or what we have taught new agents to do, but I think it needs to become a part of what you're doing, is this whole idea around leveraging social media. And one question I would ask is, are you regularly posting things on social media? And I'd say the two most impactful platforms are Facebook and LinkedIn. I was challenged on this by Eric Myers, our Sandler trainer. I met with my team last week and we put a plan and a calendar in place so that I'm beginning to post at least 3 things a week on both social media platforms. I just want there to be consistency, that I'm out there and that people see me, and that I'm feathering more alongside that. I'm liking posts, I'm commenting on posts, I'm doing things that will, create more visibility. I think that's a powerful tool that we can begin to work on that doesn't cost a dime, but you just got to have the discipline to execute whatever that plan and that schedule might be. And so I think we've got to start figuring out. I would bet next year on our PTS we'll have that as a part of this, this game plan. But that's something I think you should add in as well.
Yeah, just to kind of touch on this about hitting the numbers. I had Raphael came in and spent some time with me yesterday. He's a new rep out of the Fort Wayne area. And one of the things we did is I did a phone session, and it took me about 45 minutes. But in that time, based on my dials, the voice messages, the text, the emails, I got 60 points in less than an hour. So when people say, because again, when you're talking about 750 points, that's 150 points a day. I did 60 in an hour. So again, when you start tracking this stuff and just making that commitment to do this, that's what's going to change things. But it's going to take time. It's a snowball on top of a hill. And so just to kind of wrap up, I'm going to wrap up with what Silas started with, the mastery techniques from Sandler. There's 2 things we do in this business. We need to do lead creation and we need to do lead conversion. Lead creation is number 1, do I have a cookbook? What's my cookbook? It's my map of life, it's my goals and game plans, and it's my PTS. And then am I executing it to design, which means I have to track it. But guys, the most important thing you can do in your business is learn how to become a lead creator. Because if you learn how to create leads, 2 things happen. Number 1, you have no competition. That's why we're going to start talking about ICRA next week, because nobody's walking into small business owners talking about ICRA. And from what Maggie said, and I talked to Randy DeVries this morning, who are starting to do this, they're getting some interest on ICRA. The whole lead conversion thing, am I reaching out to the right people, the right organizations? Am I saying the right thing at the right? That's our presentation. That's when we get in front of people. So many new people want to focus on the lead conversion. I got to know my presentation. I got to, what's my script, all that. Guys, none of that stuff matters if you don't have anybody to talk to. And if you don't learn how to create your own leads, what in the world are you going to do if the government finally says there is no more internet leads, there are no more live transfers, there's too many rogue agents? If you don't know how to fish, how are you going to eat? Now, it may never change, but Silas and I, we've seen the lead business change a lot in the last 20 years. And I could see a time where the ways that we have been taught to get leads could be very, very restrictive, expensive, limited. Guys, it doesn't cost me anything to walk into a business and just say, hey, are you taking advantage of an IRS approved program that was put in effect in 2020 that can help you and your employees? What are you talking about? It's called ICRA. Can we set up a 20-minute time to get together so I can show it to you? Guys, we need to become masters at lead creation, because if we can master lead creation, we have no competition, because the insurance industry now is a telesales multi-state. Employer or people that sell group plans don't walk into small businesses. They don't want to deal with it. We have an untapped opportunity that if we learn to create leads in this space, We have no competition. And when you can learn to create your own leads, you also have an unlimited income potential because you're not dependent on anybody else. And by creating your own leads and getting in front of enough people and talking, that's where you're going to get good at the lead conversion. You get good at the presentation by making a bunch of bad ones. You start finding the right people to talk to by first talking to anybody who'll let you in the door and then getting selective because you're really good at creating leads. If we can teach you guys to become self-sufficient where you're not relying on live transfers, you're not relying on the internet leads, man, I think we can take over this Northwest Indiana, Southern Michigan in a way that we've never dreamed possible. So how's that for an ending?
I honestly, I was sitting here just listening to you wrap things up, Cav. I'm like, this might be one of the single most impactful ADTs that we've done. I know there's nothing here that is like rocket science, but this is where it all starts. A few things in the chat box. Zach asked, does Health Markets have any marketing on ICRA? My response to that would be, why don't you come next week, Zach? Because that's what we're focusing on. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. That's what we're going to talk about next week is what tools you have that and what verbiage we should be using and what processes we should be implementing around that. And then Ashley asked, what type of post are you posting? So that's a good question, Ashley. So at least what I'm building out now mine is maybe a little bit different because I want to start posting some things around the team. So we're gonna start posting the top 5 agents on the sales team at the beginning of each month for the previous month. Um, as new agents come in and hit their first new business, we're going to begin, posting that. I'm also actively seeking out articles from third parties that are pertinent to the business and the industry. I did this for many years, and I just stopped doing it, and I want to get back to it. And so I've got my staff making sure that I stay on task with this. But taking an industry, there's a lot of cool things you can do even with Google to set up some keyword searches where it's just constantly combing and looking for things related to what we do, whether it's ICRAs or Medicare or health insurance or supplemental insurance or life insurance. So just pulling pertinent articles. And the way I've always liked to do that is I post the article and then I'll put a little like just 2 or 3 sentence blurb in there about what's important in that article or what I'm pulling out of that article. So I'm using third parties to post that. I would also say, leveraging the health markets. So health markets puts out a lot of content. There's stuff on marketing on demand that you can post, which is completely compliance approved. And there's other posts that they post that you can share and push forward. So it doesn't all have to be stuff that you're building from scratch or completely organic. It can absolutely be taking what other people take and then putting it back out there. One thing I would just a best practice around that I found is that if you're taking something that someone else posted, like a specific person posted, instead of just stealing it and making it your own, give them kudos, like tag them in your line. Hey, thanks to Kaleo for sharing this particular article. Here's what I pulled from it. Maybe you'll see something of value, and post the article. So I think you just got to kind of be thoughtful and intentional around what you're going to do. We're trying to build it out. I mean, 3 a week seems like a lot. I'd also tell you, if you guys haven't started playing with AI, you need to, whether it's Grok or ChatGPT, you literally can go out into these AI platforms and say, build me out a calendar of social media posts related to health insurance, life insurance, and Medicare insurance, for the next 90 days. And it will build out content for you. So there's a lot of cool things that are at our fingertips that we used to have to do all the work on it, and you don't have to do all the work anymore. I would tell you anything that you do pull out of AI, I would tweak it a little bit, make it your own. Sometimes there is this, it's almost like there's times I see things and I'm like, that was obviously AI driven or AI built, right? So you don't want to make it be completely AI built. You want to put your own spin on it. But those are some ideas as far as just getting consistent with posting. And I think it's the consistency, just like every other damn thing we're talking about here, right? It's just having the courage to build the consistency. I'll end with a quick personal story. I'm super proud of my 16-year-old son. He turned 16 last week. For those of you who don't know, he loves football. Football has been his life for the last 10 or 12 years. I coached him through Pee Wee League. I think, he's a freshman this year, and he's now played 10 or 11 years worth of football. He loves the game. He was going into his senior year last fall, or I'm sorry, into his freshman year last fall. Huge aspirations on what he wanted to do. And 2 practices before the first game, he dislocated both of his kneecaps in a practice and required surgery. They couldn't do the surgery together. They wanted to do it 90 days apart so one could heal and then the next one, could have the surgery and heal. And then he was down. So like, through the end of the fourth quarter, into January, he was just like down, couldn't do anything. Became very good at Xbox and video games during that time because he couldn't do anything else. But as he started to come back, he got into rehab. We actually found a local trainer that has begun working with him. And so he's now about 3 months in to grinding to get back to what he wants to do, which is play football this fall. And there's no question in his mind about what he wants to do. But I'm super proud of him because I'm taking him at 5 o'clock 4 mornings a week. He's doing an hour and a half workout with a group of guys and a trainer who's had this same injury. And I'm watching him grind and I'm pouring into him every single morning when I take him and encouraging him because it's a tough thing. This last week, he's been struggling. I think some mental health things around like having to go to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, not being able to spend time with his friends, not being able to work out with his friends because he's grinding on this path to get back to the place where he wants to be, which is playing football this fall. And that's all that matters at this point. But I think there's just so many like common denominators between the grind that I'm seeing him work his way through and the work it takes to get up at 4:45 as a 16-year-old kid and go work out for an hour and a half. I just think there's a lot of parallels to what we have to do in our businesses to be successful. We have to grind. We just have to build a plan and execute the plan and stick to the plan. And that's what works. That's what gets you where you want to go. And I keep encouraging him, and I'd encourage all of you. The success that you will see at the end of that grind will be worth it. You will look back and it's not nearly as bad as it felt in the moment. But you got to hold yourself accountable. And candidly, that's where most people fall down and fail, is they don't hold themselves accountable to grinding day in and day out and putting the 40 hours a week in that it requires. So that would be my biggest encouragement as we wrap up today. Make sure that you're doing the grind. Make sure you're engaging in the behaviors. Make sure that you have that cookbook. And I'll tell you, your sales leaders, your mentors, Cav, Sandra, myself, we're all more than willing to help guide you and help direct you and help give you feedback on your cookbook because that's where you need to start. And if you guys are at a point where you're like, yeah, I know I did a goals and game plan and a map of life at some point, but I have not followed it. I don't even know what it was or where it is. Start from scratch, rebuild that, and figure out what are you going to do starting this week to build that out and follow that plan. So just a couple things in the chat box here. Lauren said sometimes you can say, make it sound more like me, and it will. Oh, she's talking about AI. That's crazy. I didn't know that. And a little eerie. But and then Casey said, a quote I like comes to mind from today's ADT. And the quote is, it's easier to act your way into thinking differently than it is to think your way into acting differently. That's really good. I have not heard that one before. That's a good one, though. I'm actually capturing it and screenshotting it. So appreciate you sharing that, Casey. Well, hey, guys and gals, I hope you all go out there and crush it this week. We've got to have more activity. I'm seeing some of you struggle, and I just want to see you find success. And I promise you, some of the tidbits that Steve and I shared today will get you there if you are willing to do the work and you're willing to grind. Next week's going to be really good. We're going to have some cool things to share with you, some new ideas, some innovative twists on some old ideas. So I'd encourage you guys, jump back on next week, 10 o'clock, and make sure you're on the Savvy ICRA training, which is Thursday afternoon at 1. That'll be a really good training as well. So we appreciate you. Cav, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I'm actually on a final expense webinar at the same time. That's why I keep listening to other things. But
all right, we'll go figure out final expense for us then. That's a great idea. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great week. See ya.
yeah.